Let's go ahead and bring in special report anchor Bret Baier. He joins us via phone to react to the news. Bret, initial thoughts off the bat about this choice?
Well, I think to Kaylee's point, I do think Republicans in some corners are rejoicing. They thought that Josh Shapiro was going to be a specific challenge for them in Pennsylvania. I can tell you Dave McCormick, the Senate candidate in Pennsylvania, is probably very happy right now. It makes that less challenging, perhaps, that race against Bob Casey. But I do think that it is a doubling down on the progressive side of the party. I also think it shows the inherent power of Nancy Pelosi. I mean, think about all that she has influenced, perhaps, in just the last 4.5 weeks. The removal of a Democratic nominee, current president, and now, you know, in part, the selection of the vice presidential nominee. She was weighing in, and her point mattered. I think it raises some questions about the Jewish vote and how perhaps afraid the Democratic Party is of the Palestinian protester clash that we may still see some of in Chicago, but perhaps less now with Josh Shapiro not on the ticket. And finally, I do think that it is interesting. You know, he's 60 years old, roughly the same age as Kamala Harris, and it's a different look. Minnesota obviously is not one that is really in play. A state, it was closer, but it won't be now probably. And it's a fascinating pick that really has some people scratching their heads.
Bret, just to the point that you began with there, RNC Research on X right now, they're firing away already. Here's Kamala's VP contender, Tim Walz. They've got video already online defending sanctuary cities and sanctuary states. The transcript goes like this. Should Minnesota be a sanctuary state? If the definition of that is that the federal government enforces immigration law and local law enforcement enforces local law, then yes. Should cities be allowed to be sanctuary cities? Yes, local control. So this is the angle they have chosen to go after Walz, and that means crime will be a contending issue for Republicans going after this ticket.
Of course, and the 2020 riots comes front and center in Minnesota. I also think you look at who she didn't pick, not only Shapiro, but Mark Kelly, you know, two moderates in swing states that Democrats really think they have a chance at. She went the other way. And, you know, for a candidate who is going to have some issues running away from some of the things she said in 2019 in her own presidential race, this is a doubling down, and this is a clear choice ideologically, I think, as well.
Bret, he's got, Walz, that is, has got 12 years served in the House. He's got 5+ years as governor now. Yet, according to the latest ABC Ipsos poll, 9 out of 10 Americans say they don't know enough about him to have an opinion. That is a real challenge for the ticket.
Yeah, they're going to get him out and about. I think he'll be the attack dog. I think the Democrats look at him as an antidote head-to-head with J.D. Vance. And it'll be fascinating. Bill, you and I talked about it on the set last night of Special Report. You know, this is a real battle for the Rust Belt. You know, who could out-Rust Belt each other as far as those voters. Tim Walz and J.D. Vance will go head-to-head, and we'll see who pulls it out.
Yeah, and what we were talking about was coming out of the convention in Milwaukee, what the target was. I have heard from leading Republican strategists the following line. There is a substantial number of white men without college degrees in Minnesota and Wisconsin and Michigan and Pennsylvania who voted in 2016 but sat out 2020. And a lot of what the theory of the case was for the presentation in Milwaukee during the convention is to go after those men and get them to vote in 2024, which would give Donald Trump a chance in Wisconsin, give him a chance in Michigan, and also in Pennsylvania, Bret.
I agree with you. I mean, this guy hunts. He ice fishes. You know, he's one of those guys. He talks about rural America and how Donald Trump doesn't understand it. On the flip side, Donald Trump and the former president and J.D. Vance are talking directly to those folks and trying to get those folks, just like they built that coalition Trump did in 2016. You know, listen, we just have to think about the party, the Democratic Party. The delegates themselves are really controlled by progressives. And, you know, if you think back to the power of Bernie Sanders after 2016, when Hillary Clinton goes on to get that nomination, you know, the power inside was very progressive. And it still may be, because labor, you know, weighed in on the scales on this choice. Progressives in the party weighed in.
Harris Walz, most left-wing ticket in American history. Minnesota was ground zero for the BLM riots in 2020. Harris egged it on, and Walz sat by and let Minneapolis burn. So that's his initial reaction. Kellyanne Conway, who works with us here, she crunches numbers all over the country. She says, Tim Walz, question mark. What a relief. That on X right now. Jillian?
Walz did come to some sort of social media, internet notoriety over the last week or so, Bret. He's given the credit for coining the term weird to describe the Republican ticket. That's obviously taken off among the Harris crowd. Do you think this may be a case of the campaign choosing the shiniest object in the room?
They like how he talks. They like how he addresses media interviews. He's been on our shows. He's not afraid to get, like J.D. Vance, he's not afraid to go to different places. He's not afraid to mix it up. He does speak in plain speak. He's a former football coach, you know, former teacher. He has that appeal, that affect. I just think that for the people politically looking at what was going to benefit Kamala Harris, specifically with states and specifically with moderates and independents and suburban women and maybe never Trump or skeptical Trump Republicans, I'm not sure that this pick gets there, but we will see how he performs. We'll see it in Chicago on Wednesday night.
We shall. Thank you, Bret. Stand by, okay? Bret Baier on telephone there.
I'm Steve Doocy.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.